Hello class, today we're going to discuss the novel Eleanor and Park and how the media affects identity and representation. So, how does having no role models comprised of Asian American men affect Park and his relationship with Eleanor? In the novel Eleanor and Park, Park speaks to Eleanor about his insecurities and the lack of representation of Asian American actors in American cinema, media, and television. He discusses with Eleanor that the way Asian men are treated is drastically different from Asian women. He uses an example from the television show MASH, stating that all male actors in that show were white, even though the setting was in Korea, and the only Asian actors had stereotypical roles. He says, "Nobody thinks Asian guys are hot." He had to look away from her when he said it. Way away. He turned his head completely. "Not here, anyway. I assume Asian guys do all right in Asia. And Asian girls are different. White guys think they're exotic." Park also has difficulty figuring out who he is because he doesn't see himself reflected anywhere. Park's father is white and his brother looks white, so he feels like he's the only Asian man in his town. By pointing this out, Park is showing his insecurities within himself and how other people view him. Okay, so Park goes on to explain that American entertainment platforms rarely, if ever, depict Asian men to be desired beyond their abilities to perform martial arts and the stereotypical nerdy qualities. So this misrepresentation makes it nearly impossible for Park to have a positive Asian male role model who does anything beyond what the media portrays him to be. So something important to know with that is that the U.S. was involved in the Korean War from 1950 to 1953 and the Vietnam War from 1955 to 1975. These accounts caused a stigma for all Asians, not just Koreans and the Vietnamese. Okay, so the only Asian role model Park would typically see in the media in the 1980s was depicted as either the stereotypical nerd, the ninja, the sidekick, the villain, or even the monk. So there was never that lead romantic role that he could see. So here's something from the book. Eleanor, what about that old TV show with the karate guy? Park, Kung Fu? Eleanor, yeah, Park. That actor was white and that character was a monk. So this is them kind of struggling and finding that example of that Asian American that is celebrated and positive, and they really just can't find one. So here are a few examples of Asian American actors in the 1980s. There's Jonathan K. Kwan, who was in Indiana Jones, but he was a sidekick, and 11, by the way. There was Gede Watanabe, and he was a comedic side role who was also depicted as a nerd in 16 Candles. Last but not least, there's Dustin Nguyen, which he actually kind of broke away from those stereotypes. He was a cop in 21 Jump Street and actually had a very high and lead role in that TV show. So the reason we just gave you guys all this information is we want you to know that the media figures are so important because even if Park's dad was an Asian American, Park told us that he'd always felt very different from everyone in his family, his mom, dad, and brother included. So he searched to find a male figure to identify with. However, due to the lack of Asian American influence, he wasn't able to find one in the media, so he wasn't able to find one, period. As Ms. Kaiser mentioned earlier, the only role models available for Park in the 1980s were martial arts masters, stereotypical nerd, a sidekick, a villain, or even a monk sometimes. As we know, Park didn't embody any of these traits, so he wasn't able to identify with them, and he found them somewhat constrictive. We still struggle with this today. Even in today's society, we see a large misrepresentation of Asian Americans in our movies, TV shows, and even music. So we can imagine that many Asian Americans, kids in particular, are struggling to find a role model just like Park did in the book. Something we want to leave you guys with to think about for next class is this question that we have below that we would like you to answer.